Captain Ethan Cole gritted his teeth as the hull of his ship shuddered violently. Sparks flew across the control panel and the alarm screamed a harsh warning. He had been flying for days in deep space alone, when a sudden jolt threw him off balance. Something had sabotaged his ship, he could feel it. He had no time to think. He gripped the controls tightly, trying to stabilize the failing engines. Below him, the surface of the alien planet loomed, a swirling mass of purple and green landscapes, jagged mountains, and deep canyons. Ethan knew he couldn't hold out for long. The ship's systems were failing. The engines coughed, sputtered, and then roared one final time before the whole vessel began to spiral out of control. With a thunderous crash, the ship hit the ground. Metal groaned, fire erupted, and the shockwave threw Ethan across the cockpit. He hit his head. Black spots danced in his vision, and pain radiated through his side. Gasping for air, he forced himself upright. His suit was scorched and torn, his left arm bleeding. He tried to call for help, but the comms were dead. He was completely alone on a world that no human had ever set foot on. Slowly, Ethan climbed out of the wreckage. The sky was strange, painted with hues of orange and violet, with clouds that swirled in unnatural patterns. The ground beneath him was rough, dotted with sharp stones that tore at his boots. As he limped forward, he realized the ship was beyond repair. He had only one choice: survive and hope someone or something found him. The first hours were painful. Every step reminded him of the sharp pain in his side. He had learned long ago that panic would kill faster than injuries, so he focused on moving. He searched for water, edible plants, or any sign of life. Nothing appeared for miles. Just strange rocks, twisted trees with glowing leaves, and occasional bursts of wind that carried a scent he could not recognize. As night fell, the alien world revealed another side. Strange lights moved across the horizon. At first he thought they were stars, but they were too close, too steady. Something was moving, something alive. Ethan froze, listening. There was no sound at first. Then he heard it, heavy footsteps pounding across the rocky terrain. They were fast, precise, almost mechanical. Before he could react, a group of figures appeared from the darkness. They were tall, armored with long spears that glowed faintly at their tips. Their faces were hidden behind helmets shaped like jagged shells. They stopped a few meters from him, surrounding him completely. Ethan raised his hands in a sign of peace. "I'm not armed," he said slowly, hoping they could understand. The lead figure tilted its head. Its armor reflected the strange alien light. Ethan noticed that the movement of their eyes, if they had eyes, was deliberate, calculating. Suddenly, the air around him felt heavier. He realized these were not ordinary beings. These were guards, and he was deep in territory he did not understand. Before the situation could escalate, a new presence entered the area. Ethan felt a strange, almost magnetic pull. The air shifted and a hush fell over the guards. From the shadows, a figure emerged, tall, regal, commanding. The armor fell away, revealing sleek, iridescent skin that shimmered in the alien light. Her eyes glowed softly, intelligent and piercing. This was the alien queen. Ethan staggered back, clutching his side. The queen stopped a few meters away. She studied him, her gaze sharp and yet strangely calm. The guards who had been ready to attack hesitated. And then something unexpected happened. They dropped their spears. The glowing weapons clattered to the ground, leaving Ethan wide-eyed. He looked at her, confused. Was she going to kill him? Or protect him? The queen stepped closer. Her movements were smooth, like water flowing over stones. Ethan could hear her breathing, steady and controlled, yet somehow intimidating. She extended a slender hand, palm open, and Ethan felt a strange warmth. Though he could not understand her words, he sensed that she was speaking to him, not in threats but in curiosity. Ethan weakly nodded, showing he was not a threat. "I crashed," he managed to say, his voice hoarse. "I didn't mean to. Any trouble?" The queen tilted her head, inspecting the blood that stained his suit and the injury on his side. Her expression changed subtly. It was not fear, not anger, but astonishment. She had seen warriors, soldiers, and spies, but she had never seen a being endure such pain and still stand upright. Ethan's resilience, the sheer stubbornness to survive, was unusual even to her. The guards exchanged nervous glances. Ethan noticed their hesitation. They were loyal, yes, but the queen's attention alone was enough to make them rethink any action. Even the sharpest warriors could not act against her will. Carefully, the queen motioned for Ethan to follow her. He hesitated. His body ached, but he knew resistance would only make things worse. Slowly, he limped after her. The guards flanked him but did not touch him. The Queen's presence was enough to keep them in line. As they walked, Ethan caught glimpses of the city. The architecture was unlike anything he had seen. Towers spiraled into the sky like twisting vines. Bridges glowed faintly with light, and everywhere alien figures moved with grace and precision. Despite the apparent danger, there was a strange beauty here, a balance of technology and nature that made the world feel alive. Inside the palace, the Queen gestured for him to sit on a platform, more ceremonial than practical. A group of attendants approached with devices that hummed quietly, scanning his injuries. He tried to protest, but the Queen's gaze was firm. She would not allow him to refuse. A soft blue light shone over his wound, and the pain dulled almost immediately. Ethan's breath caught. He had seen advanced human medical tech, but this was beyond anything he imagined. He flexed his fingers, testing the restored strength in his side. It was not complete, but it would allow him to move without collapsing. The Queen watched closely. Ethan noticed her eyes linger on his face, studying his expressions, noting his reactions. He felt exposed, but in a way that was not entirely threatening. She seemed fascinated by him, by his species, by his resilience, by the fact that he had survived alone on this planet. After a long silence, the Queen finally spoke, though her words were foreign. Ethan could not understand them, but she pointed to him, then to herself, then to the city outside. He realized she wanted him to stay, or at least to explore the palace under her watch. He nodded slowly. As the night deepened, Ethan learned more. The Queen's name was Zelaria. She ruled with intelligence, strength, and a firm sense of justice. The guards, though fierce, respected her completely. The palace was filled with wonders, floating lights, plants that glowed like stars, and walls that shifted color according to mood. Ethan felt a strange mix of fear and awe. He was a human on an alien world, injured and far from home, yet he was alive. More than that, the Queen had noticed him. His injury, which could have been his end, had instead become a sign of something else, something that earned him her attention. As he drifted into a fitful sleep, he thought about what lay ahead. He knew this was only the beginning. The planet was full of dangers, both known and unknown. But for the first time since the crash, he felt a spark of hope. He was alive, he had survived the landing, and somehow the alien Queen had spared him. In the quiet of the palace, the Queen watched over him. There was curiosity in her gaze and perhaps a hint of respect. She had seen something in this human, something she did not yet fully understand. And for a human to survive on her world, in her presence, was no small feat. Outside, the guards patrolled silently, their weapons set aside but their eyes alert. They had learned in the first few minutes of seeing Ethan that he was not ordinary, and in this strange, distant world, being extraordinary could make all the difference. The night passed slowly. Ethan's body rested, but his mind raced. Questions filled him. Why had his ship been sabotaged? Who were his enemies? And why had the Queen spared him when her guards had seemed ready to kill on a moment's notice? One thing was certain. His journey had just begun. On a world far from Earth, surrounded by alien technology, strange creatures, and a Queen who had just recognized something remarkable in him. Ethan's story was about to unfold, and he was ready despite the pain, despite the unknown. The morning light on the alien world was different from Earth's. The sun, twin suns in fact, painted the sky in shades of gold and green. Ethan awoke on a smooth, elevated platform inside the palace. The soft hum of energy filled the room, a sound that seemed alive, almost breathing. His injury throbbed slightly, but it no longer burned. The alien medical treatment had done more than just heal. It had strengthened him in ways he could feel but not yet understand. Sitting up slowly, Ethan observed the room. The walls shifted color as he moved, glowing gently with each motion, and strange symbols floated in midair, shifting with light. The platform he rested on seemed alive, vibrating softly as if it could sense his heartbeat. For a human, everything here was overwhelming. Yet amid the strange sights, his mind focused on one thing: the alien Queen. Zelaria entered quietly, her presence more commanding than the hum of the palace. Her long, flowing robes shimmered, reflecting colors that Ethan could barely name. Her eyes were fixed on him as she approached. She stopped a few steps away, folding her hands in front of her. There was no anger, no threat. Instead, there was curiosity, sharp and intelligent. Ethan tried to speak. "I thank you for saving me." His voice cracked slightly. He realized how little he knew about her world, her rules, or even how to communicate properly. The Queen tilted her head slightly. Her eyes softened for a moment as if she acknowledged his words without needing to hear them. She gestured toward a holographic device floating nearby. Symbols and shapes rotated in the air. She pointed at Ethan, then at the images. He understood. She wanted to learn about him. Ethan took a deep breath. I am human. From Earth. He pointed to himself, then used the device's translation function. The symbols shifted, forming patterns he could understand. Slowly, he began to describe humanity, its cities, its technology, its history, its wars, and its resilience. The Queen listened quietly, her eyes never leaving him. Occasionally, she leaned closer, touching the air between them, her fingertips emitting a soft light that interacted with the holograms. Ethan felt a strange connection, as if she could sense not just his words but his thoughts and emotions. After a long pause, she gestured toward a nearby table filled with food. Strange fruits glowing in soft blue and purple shades floated slightly above the surface. Ethan hesitated. He had learned to be careful with alien food, but hunger and curiosity won. He picked one up, noting its warm texture. When he bit into it, the flavor exploded in his mouth. Sweet, tangy, and slightly metallic, yet not unpleasant. The Queen watched, her expression unreadable, yet he sensed approval. As he ate, Ethan began to notice the guards outside the room. They were no longer tense or hostile. They moved gracefully, observing but never interrupting. The moment he realized he was being watched, his instinct for caution returned. Humans were adaptable, and he knew he had to understand the Queen's world quickly if he wanted to survive. Your guards, he said slowly, pointing toward the door. They dropped their weapons. Did they fear me? Silaria's expression shifted slightly. She shook her head, then raised her hand. A hologram appeared in the air, showing images of warriors, battles, and wounds. Ethan realized she was showing him the past, the strength of her guards, the power they wielded, and the kind of injuries they had survived. Then she projected an image of his wound. Ethan understood. She was not afraid of him, nor were her guards. The wound itself, human resilience under injury, was something new, something unexpected. The Queen's reaction was not fear of the injury, but recognition, a respect for a being that could survive what should have been fatal. He felt a mixture of pride and unease. On Earth, survival was a skill. Here, it seemed almost sacred. Silaria's gaze held him, weighing him, studying him. Her attention was intense, almost as if she were searching for the limits of his endurance. As the day progressed, Ethan was shown more of the palace. He walked carefully, his body still weak, yet he marveled at everything he saw. The floors were smooth and self-cleaning, reacting to weight and pressure. Lights floated in patterns that reminded him of stars. The walls displayed historical events showing battles, diplomacy, and alliances of Silaria's people. Everywhere, the Queen's influence was clear. The palace was not just a building, it was alive, a reflection of her intelligence, strategy, and power. Ethan realized that the Queen's world was not ruled by fear alone. It was ruled by respect, knowledge, and the recognition of strength. He, a stranger and an injured human, had earned a small part of that respect simply by surviving. During a quiet moment, Silaria gestured for him to sit. A translator device activated, allowing him to understand some of her words. Your species is unusual, she said. To endure injury and still move forward? Remarkable. Ethan nodded slowly. We adapt. We survive. Even when it seems impossible. Her eyes gleamed softly. Survival is valuable. You show courage. Your presence, unexpected yet necessary. Ethan did not fully understand what she meant, but he felt a spark of trust. For a being so powerful, she did not threaten him. She observed him, questioned him, and most importantly, allowed him to remain. But not everything in the palace was peaceful. As they walked through the inner halls, Ethan noticed subtle tensions among the attendants and minor officials. Whispers, glances, and hurried movements suggested secrets and plots. One shadowed figure seemed particularly wary of him, darting glances toward Silaria as if questioning her choice to let him live. Ethan's instincts, sharpened by years of survival in hostile environments, told him that danger was near. This world, beautiful and advanced as it was, held threats invisible to the eye. Later, in the Queen's private chambers, Ethan's curiosity grew. He asked, through gestures and the translator, why the Queen had spared him. Xylaria considered this carefully. She motioned for him to look at his wound. Then she pointed to her eyes, then to the guards, then to herself, and finally to him again. Ethan understood. She had seen strength where others saw weakness. The guards, trained to obey her commands, had immediately respected her judgment. She had recognized in him a potential ally, or at least a being worthy of her attention. A sense of responsibility settled on him. Being on this planet was no longer about survival alone. He had to understand the Queen, her people, and their culture. If he wanted to leave alive or influence the future, he needed to earn trust, not just survive injury. As he trained in the palace's observation rooms, the Queen introduced him to her world subtly. Holograms of landscapes, city layouts, and military formations filled the room. He learned how her people defended their cities, communicated across long distances, and handled intruders. The information was overwhelming, yet fascinating. He realized humans were resourceful, but these aliens had technology and tactics beyond anything he had imagined. Yet, despite the vast differences, Ethan began to see patterns familiar to him. Discipline, hierarchy, the importance of quick thinking in battle, and the respect for courage. Humans and this alien species shared more in common than he had expected. Courage, intelligence, and adaptability were universal. By evening, Ethan had recovered enough to move without assistance. He ventured through the palace gardens under the Queen's watchful eye. Bioluminescent plants glowed softly, and strange insects hovered, reflecting light like tiny stars. The air smelled faintly of sweet minerals and ozone. Despite his exhaustion, he felt alive. He looked at Xylaria. She walked beside him, silent and graceful. She pointed to the sky, then to him, then back to her palace. Ethan sensed her intent. She was testing him, observing his reactions, and perhaps preparing him for challenges ahead. Suddenly, a commotion erupted at the palace gates. Guards rushed past, their weapons ready, moving with precision and urgency. Ethan's heart raced. He had learned quickly that danger could appear at any moment. Yet the Queen remained calm, her eyes fixed on him. She gestured subtly, indicating that he should stay close. Ethan realized this was only the beginning. The Queen had spared him, yes, but her world was filled with secrets, rivalries, and threats he could not yet see. And he, an injured human far from home, was now at the center of it. As night fell, Ethan sat in the palace gardens, gazing at the glowing horizon. The injury that had brought him here now felt like a symbol of opportunity. He had survived the crash, gained the attention of one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and lived to see another day. The Queen watched him from the shadows, silent but observant. There was curiosity, respect, and something else, a recognition of human resilience that could not be ignored. For a human, surviving injury was one thing. For a human to earn the notice of a queen, alien, proud, and powerful, was extraordinary. Ethan knew that the next days would test him further. Learning the ways of this alien world, understanding its politics, and surviving its hidden dangers would require every skill he had. Yet for the first time since the crash, he felt hope. He was not just a survivor. He was a participant in something larger, something that could shape not only his fate but perhaps the future of two worlds. And for a human, that possibility was worth every risk. Ethan awoke to a soft hum that seemed to flow through the palace walls. His body no longer ached as it had before, and the sharp pain from his injury was now only a dull reminder. The alien treatment had worked faster and more efficiently than any human medicine. He flexed his fingers, then his arms, and tested his legs. He could move freely, almost fully healed. But he knew that survival in this alien world meant more than physical strength. He had to understand the people, the politics, and the dangers that came with being near the Queen. The morning light cast a soft glow on the palace's floating platforms. Ethan stepped carefully, observing the strange mechanisms that kept the entire structure suspended in mid-air. He noticed plants that moved as he passed, turning their luminous flowers toward him. Alien technology and nature blended seamlessly here. Everything seemed alive, aware, and purposeful. Xylaria appeared silently, as always. She did not speak, yet her gaze seemed to communicate more than words could. She gestured for him to follow her into a corridor filled with glowing panels and floating symbols. Ethan moved behind her cautiously, realizing that this corridor might be a training or observation area. The Queen seemed to want him to see but not yet fully understand. As they walked, Ethan began to notice patterns in the palace. The attendants and guards moved with exact precision. Whispers carried over the air, careful and deliberate. Every gesture seemed meaningful, every glance calculated. And then he noticed something else, a tension beneath the surface. Some attendants avoided certain areas or darted quick glances at Xylaria. Something was not right. In a chamber filled with floating lights and holographic projections, Xylaria stopped. Symbols of battles, past conflicts, and alien history floated before them. Ethan watched, fascinated. He realized that Xylaria's people were proud warriors, disciplined and strategic, yet their society had a rich history of knowledge and culture. He could see their achievements, their victories, and even their losses. Ethan tried to speak. "Your people are incredible. I've never seen anything like this." Xylaria nodded slightly. Then she projected a new hologram, this time showing Ethan himself, his crash site, and the injury he had endured. Ethan felt a strange mixture of pride and caution. The Queen was analyzing him not as a stranger, but as a subject of study. She wanted to understand the limits of human endurance, perhaps even test his abilities. Hours passed as he observed and learned. He realized that the Queen's curiosity was genuine. She had never encountered a human before, and Ethan's resilience fascinated her. But he also noticed the subtle signals of danger. Some figures in the holograms moved oddly, as if plotting behind her back. His instincts told him that this palace, while beautiful and advanced, was not free of intrigue. Later, in the palace gardens, Ethan practiced walking and strengthening his body. The alien world was harsh outside the palace walls, with jagged terrain and unpredictable weather. But here it was safe. Bioluminescent plants lit his path, and soft wind carried scents that reminded him of Earth's forests. Yet he could not relax completely. He had learned that beauty could hide danger. As he walked, he overheard two attendants speaking in hushed tones. Though he could not understand the words, the tone of their voices conveyed urgency, fear, and secrecy. They glanced toward the Queen's chambers, then toward him. Ethan's mind raced. Could there be a threat to Xylaria? A plot he needed to know about? He waited until the attendants left, then cautiously approached one of the guards who had shown loyalty from the beginning. He made gestures trying to indicate danger and secrecy. The guard's eyes narrowed and he nodded slightly. Ethan realized he had found an ally, even if only a subtle one. That night, Xylaria summoned him to a private chamber. The room was darker than others, lit by soft blue lights that made the floating symbols more visible. She gestured for him to sit, then projected a map of the palace and surrounding areas. Ethan watched carefully. The hologram highlighted certain rooms and corridors with faint red lines. Xylaria pointed to one of the lines, then made a gesture that resembled stealth or secrecy. Ethan understood immediately. Someone within the palace was planning something. An attack, perhaps even an assassination attempt. His pulse quickened. Despite his injuries, he had to act. Humans were taught to think fast, to adapt in unexpected situations, and now he was inside an alien world where danger could appear anywhere. He took a deep breath and approached Xylaria, pointing toward the lines on the map. The Queen's expression remained calm, but her eyes sharpened. She had noticed his comprehension. She gestured for him to follow her quietly. Together they moved through the palace halls. Ethan noticed how the Queen communicated silently with her guards. Subtle gestures, hand movements, and eye contact conveyed precise instructions. He realized that even without understanding the language fully, he could learn by observation. Humans were quick learners, and survival often depended on paying attention. Ethan and Xylaria reached a corridor that seemed abandoned. The walls glowed faintly, revealing hidden surveillance points. He saw shadows moving in the distance, figures trying to avoid detection. His instincts told him these were the conspirators. The Queen stopped and motioned for him to stay close. She extended a hand, and the symbols in the air around them shifted, creating a shield-like barrier. Ethan realized this was a protective field, something he could not fully understand but could respect. They moved silently, observing the movements of the would-be attackers. Ethan noticed one of the figures trying to manipulate a device near the Queen's ceremonial chamber. If successful, it could have caused chaos, perhaps even harmed Xylaria. He gestured toward the device and mimicked a neutralizing motion. The Queen's eyes glowed faintly, acknowledging his suggestion. Together they approached quickly but carefully. Using a combination of his human knowledge and observation of alien technology, Ethan triggered a harmless diversion. The figure froze, then moved to investigate the disturbance, unaware that the Queen and Ethan were now nearby. With precise timing, Xylaria's guards appeared, surrounding the conspirators. The attack was prevented before it could even begin. Ethan exhaled slowly. He had acted despite his weakened state, using logic, courage, and quick thinking. The Queen's gaze met his. She did not smile, but there was a hint of approval, almost pride. She had seen humans before, perhaps in reports or records, but she had never witnessed one act so decisively in her presence. The conspirators were taken into custody. Ethan observed them being led away, realizing that palace life, while beautiful, was filled with unseen danger. Every being had motives, and every action could shift the balance of power. Humans often relied on instinct and adaptability. On this planet, those traits could save lives, as he had just proven. Later, in a quiet chamber, the Queen approached Ethan. She projected a new hologram, this one showing the outer regions of her world, the cities and the lands beyond. She pointed at him, then at the hologram, then back to herself. Ethan understood. She wanted him to see the bigger picture, to understand the importance of his presence. He nodded slowly. "I will learn. I will understand." The Queen's expression softened slightly. Though she still carried the weight of authority, there was recognition in her eyes. She had seen something extraordinary, a human injured and alone who could adapt, survive, and act decisively. In her world, strength was not only measured in power or technology, but in courage and intelligence. Ethan had shown all three. As night fell, Ethan returned to the garden terraces. The twin moons rose, casting gentle light on the glowing plants. He reflected on the events of the day, the conspirators, the Queen's fascination, and his role in preventing disaster. He realized that survival here required more than physical strength. It required understanding, trust, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. Ethan looked at the palace's shimmering towers, feeling a sense of awe. He was no longer just a crash survivor. He had earned a place, small as it might be, in the Queen's attention and respect. That respect was fragile, dependent on his choices and actions, yet it was real. For a human, it was a rare and powerful thing to gain recognition from a being so different, so intelligent, and so powerful. And for Ethan, the path ahead was clear. He had to continue learning, continue observing, and be ready for the challenges that this alien world would present. As he settled to rest, he thought about the future. His injury had brought him here, but his courage and resourcefulness had kept him alive. The Queen had spared him, but the palace held secrets, dangers, and opportunities he had yet to discover. He was no longer just a human lost on an alien world. He was a participant in something much larger, and he knew that every choice, every action, and every moment of courage would matter. Ethan closed his eyes, letting the soft hum of the palace lull him to sleep. Tomorrow he would begin another day of learning, observation, and survival. And in the back of his mind, a single thought persisted. Humans were not easily broken, even on worlds far from their own. The palace was quiet in the early morning, but Ethan could feel the tension in the air. Despite the beauty of the floating gardens and glowing halls, something was wrong. The Queen's gaze, calm yet sharp, seemed to search for him across the corridors. He knew today would not be like the others. There was a plan afoot, a hidden danger that required him to act. Ethan had learned much about the palace since arriving. The halls, the guards, and the technology were complex, but his human instincts told him how to navigate them. He moved carefully, watching the guards and attendants. Every glance and gesture mattered. Every movement could signal trust or suspicion. Humans were quick learners, and Ethan had proven that he could adapt. In a chamber filled with holographic maps and glowing symbols, Xylaria awaited him. She gestured for him to come closer. The Queen pointed toward a section of the palace highlighted in red on the map. Ethan understood immediately. A threat remained, one that could reach her ceremonial hall if not stopped. Ethan examined the holograms, tracing paths and corridors with his fingers. The aliens had security measures beyond anything humans had, yet their systems could be predicted. Observing patterns, noticing gaps, and using logic, Ethan began forming a plan. He realized that his human ingenuity, the ability to think outside rigid rules, was exactly what was needed: the attack. "They want to strike during the ceremony," he said, using the translator device. His voice was steady, confident. The Queen's eyes glowed faintly, acknowledging that he understood. They moved quickly through the palace, the floors humming beneath their steps. Ethan noted that the conspirators had placed subtle traps, pressure sensors, silent alarms, and automated defenses designed to confuse intruders. He remembered similar systems on Earth: military bases, experimental labs, and security installations. With careful observation, he could neutralize the traps, but speed and precision were essential. Ethan gestured to Xylaria's guards, signaling where they should position themselves. The Queen's subtle nod confirmed that she trusted his judgment. Together they moved silently toward the corridor leading to the ceremonial hall. Every step was calculated, every glance measured. Ethan felt a rush of adrenaline. Humans thrived in moments like these. Danger sharpened the mind and senses. Ahead they saw movement. Shadowed figures crept through the corridors, attempting to avoid detection. Ethan recognized them immediately, the conspirators he had seen before. His heart pounded, but he stayed calm. Panic was a human weakness, and he had learned that control could save lives. Ethan devised a simple yet clever plan. He activated a small device he had kept hidden, a human-made distraction tool adapted to alien technology. A pulse of light flashed in a distant corridor, triggering an alarm in the conspirators' path. They froze, trying to locate the source. Xylaria and her guards took advantage of the moment. With precision and speed, they surrounded the intruders before they could adjust. Ethan moved closer, guiding the Queen's guards to intercept additional threats. The human's intuition, combined with the alien technology, created an unexpected advantage. The conspirators, highly trained and cunning, had never anticipated such coordinated thinking from a human. The confrontation was swift. Ethan avoided direct combat, instead focusing on strategy. He directed the Queen's forces to block escape routes and disable devices. Within minutes, the threat was neutralized. The conspirators were captured, their plans thwarted before they could cause harm. Xylaria studied Ethan with a new intensity. Her eyes reflected not only approval but fascination. She had witnessed human adaptability firsthand. A being injured and stranded on her planet had not only survived, but had actively prevented danger with intelligence and courage. This was more than physical resilience, this was true ingenuity. After the incident, the Queen summoned Ethan to her private chambers. The walls glowed softly and the air hummed with energy. She gestured for him to sit, then projected holographic images of the palace and surrounding regions. She pointed to the devices the conspirators had attempted to use, then back to Ethan, indicating that he had understood and acted perfectly. Ethan nodded slowly. "I did what I could. Humans, we think fast. We adapt." Xylaria's expression softened slightly. She gestured toward the holograms, showing paths, strategies, and outcomes. Ethan realized that she was teaching him more than survival. She was showing him how her people viewed threats, how they planned, and how intelligence could shape victory. Over the next hours, Ethan explored further with the Queen's guidance. He learned about her planet's defenses, communication systems, and patrol strategies. Every piece of information was valuable, not just for survival, but for understanding the alien civilization itself. Humans relied on observation and problem-solving. Here those skills were amplified by advanced technology, creating opportunities that even aliens might not anticipate. During a quiet moment in the palace gardens, Ethan reflected on the events of the day. The injury that had first brought him here now seemed almost insignificant. What mattered was courage, intelligence, and adaptability. The Queen had seen these traits and had allowed him to act. That trust, earned through action, was rare in any world. Ethan realized something else. He was no longer just a guest or a survivor. He had become a participant in the governance and safety of this alien world. Humans were often underestimated, yet here, far from Earth, he had proven that quick thinking and courage could earn respect, even from the most powerful alien rulers. As night approached, the Queen guided him to a balcony overlooking the city. The twin moons reflected on glowing towers and floating platforms. The palace seemed alive, aware, and protective. Ethan understood why the Queen commanded respect and loyalty. Her people revered not just her strength, but her intelligence and fairness. He turned to Xylaria. Your world. It's incredible. But dangerous, she inclined her head. The translator allowed him to understand her meaning. Strength without vigilance is meaningless. Survival requires constant awareness, strategy, and courage. Ethan smiled faintly. Then we will be ready. Humans, we survive, and we act when it matters. The Queen's gaze lingered on him. He could sense her thoughts, curiosity, respect, and perhaps even admiration. Humans were unpredictable, and in her world, unpredictability could be a powerful asset. Ethan had survived injury, adapted to alien technology, and prevented a serious threat. In doing so, he had shown that humans were capable of more than aliens had imagined. The night was quiet. Ethan rested, but his mind was active. He reflected on his journey. The crash, the injury, the Queen's curiosity, and the palace intrigues. Every step had led to this moment, where his courage and intelligence had altered the course of events. Humans thrived in uncertainty, and he had proved it. Outside, the palace guards patrolled silently, their eyes alert yet trusting. They had witnessed a human act decisively, earning recognition and respect. Ethan understood that his actions today would have lasting impact. He was no longer just a survivor. He was part of a story that could bridge worlds, show the value of courage, and demonstrate that humans could hold their own even among the galaxy's most powerful beings. Ethan thought of Earth, far away, and of the people he had left behind. He knew he could not forget where he came from, but here he had an opportunity to influence something greater. His actions had proven that humans were not just fragile beings. They were capable, resilient, and strategic. As he watched the twin moons rise, casting silver and blue light over the palace, Ethan felt a quiet determination. The challenges ahead would be greater, the dangers more severe, but he was ready. Humans survived, adapted, and acted, and here on this distant world his ingenuity had saved a life, and perhaps a civilization. The Queen's presence remained beside him, a silent reminder that power and trust could coexist. She had observed him, allowed him to act, and recognized his abilities. In return, he had shown that courage, intelligence, and quick thinking could earn respect even in the most alien of worlds. And in that moment, Ethan understood a truth he had always known but had never fully experienced. Being human was not just about survival. It was about making a difference. No matter the odds, tomorrow would bring new challenges, new mysteries, and perhaps new dangers. But tonight, for the first time since his crash, he felt a sense of accomplishment. He had proven that humans could survive, act, and earn respect anywhere, even in a world far beyond Earth. Ethan's journey was far from over. The palace held secrets, rivalries, and unknown threats, but now he faced them with confidence, courage, and the knowledge that his ingenuity could change outcomes. He was ready for whatever the alien world would throw at him next, and somewhere deep inside he knew the Queen's respect was only the beginning. The morning light spilled across the palace terraces as Ethan prepared for another day. The events of the past days had changed him. He was no longer just a human stranded on an alien world. He was someone the Queen trusted, someone whose actions had proven the value of human courage and ingenuity. Yet Ethan knew that trust could be fragile. The palace still held unseen dangers, and the conspirators from before were only part of a larger web he could not yet fully see. Xylaria approached silently, as always. Her presence was commanding, yet there was a faint warmth in her expression today. She gestured for him to follow. They walked through corridors that seemed to shift with their steps. Ethan noticed how the guards moved, subtly rearranging themselves to accommodate their Queen's movements while remaining vigilant. The Queen led him to the council chamber, a vast room filled with alien leaders. Holographic maps and symbols floated above the floor, showing regions, cities, and patrol routes. The council members whispered among themselves, glancing at the Queen and occasionally at Ethan. He realized immediately that his presence was unusual, perhaps unprecedented. Humans were unknown here, and the fact that the Queen had allowed him into this space carried weight. Xylaria gestured toward a hologram of the palace and surrounding territories. Then she pointed at Ethan, back to the map, and finally at the council. Ethan understood. She wanted him to assist in planning the next steps for the safety of the palace and the surrounding cities. He stepped forward carefully, pointing to strategic locations, highlighting vulnerabilities, and suggesting movements based on his understanding of human tactics. The council watched closely, some skeptical, others curious. Humans were unknown to them, but Ethan's calm and precise explanations drew attention. He demonstrated how logic, adaptability, and observation could prevent threats, even with alien technology unfamiliar to him. After a long discussion, Xylaria gestured for Ethan to step aside. She projected a smaller hologram, showing an approaching fleet on the outer borders of her territory. Ethan studied it carefully. Though the fleet appeared small, his instincts told him that they could pose serious problems if they were organized, coordinated, and intent on exploiting weaknesses. Ethan turned to the Queen. "They will test your borders, but we can use strategy to anticipate their movements. Humans, we think fast. We adapt. I can help." Xylaria's eyes glowed faintly. She inclined her head, signaling agreement. Together, they devised a plan to secure the borders and prepare defenses without causing panic among the citizens. Ethan suggested using the palace's advanced surveillance systems to create decoy movements, redirecting the fleet while positioning guards strategically. Xylaria's people were impressed. They had relied on rigid procedures before, but Ethan's approach introduced flexibility and creativity. That evening, Ethan accompanied Xylaria to the palace walls overlooking the approaching fleet. Twin moons reflected on the alien ships, creating a surreal glowing scene. Ethan felt the thrill of anticipation. Humans thrived under pressure, and now he was witnessing a moment where his adaptability could truly make a difference. The Queen gestured, and the palace defenses activated. Lights shimmered, barriers raised, and drones moved in patterns Ethan had suggested. The alien fleet paused, confused by the apparent movement and activity. Ethan's plan worked flawlessly. Misdirection and observation allowed the Queen's forces to prepare while the intruders remained uncertain. Xylaria's gaze met his. For the first time, she allowed a faint smile, a subtle acknowledgement of his contribution. Ethan felt a surge of pride, tempered by the knowledge that the danger was not over. The night was quiet, but vigilance remained essential. Over the following days, Ethan's role grew. He trained with the Queen's guards, not as a warrior, but as a strategist. He observed patrols, suggested improvements in defense, and helped anticipate potential threats. The guards learned to respect him not because of his strength, but because of his insight. Humans were adaptable, and he had demonstrated this repeatedly. One afternoon, as he walked through the palace gardens, Xylaria joined him. She pointed toward the horizon, then back at him, and finally to her chest. Ethan understood she was acknowledging his courage, intelligence, and loyalty. She trusted him fully. The bond between them, though unspoken, had grown strong. Ethan realized the magnitude of what had happened. A human far from Earth had not only survived, but had earned the respect and trust of one of the most powerful rulers in the galaxy. His injury, once a weakness, had become a symbol of resilience. His actions had shown that humans were capable of more than aliens could imagine. The palace was not free of intrigue, but Ethan had proven that courage, intelligence, and quick thinking could navigate even the most complex situations. He had become a bridge between worlds, a living example of human resilience and adaptability. Late one night, as he sat in the palace gardens, Ethan reflected on his journey. The crash, the injury, the Queen's attention, and the conspiracies had all led to this moment. He had acted decisively, learned quickly, and earned trust. Humans were often underestimated, but here, in the presence of a powerful alien civilization, his species' qualities had shone through. Xylaria approached quietly, standing beside him. She gestured toward the stars, then toward him, and finally placed her hand lightly on her chest, a gesture of respect and acknowledgement. Ethan understood fully. In this alien world, he had found acceptance, recognition, and trust. The Queen led him to a ceremonial hall where a council of leaders had gathered. They had heard of his actions, witnessed his strategic contributions, and observed his courage. The room was filled with silent approval. Ethan felt the weight of their respect, yet he remained humble. Humans were adaptable, yes, but he knew this was only the beginning of his role here. During the ceremony, Xylaria addressed the council. Through gestures and the translator, Ethan followed her words. She spoke of loyalty, courage, and intelligence. Then she pointed to him, acknowledging his role in defending the palace and securing their people. The council members inclined their heads, some in admiration, others in cautious acceptance. Ethan had proven that humans, even far from Earth, could contribute meaningfully to the safety and future of an alien civilization. After the ceremony, Ethan and Xylaria walked through the palace gardens. The twin moons reflected on glowing plants and floating paths. Ethan felt a sense of peace. The Queen's respect was not just for his actions, but for the qualities humans possessed: adaptability, quick thinking, and the courage to act under pressure. Ethan realized that his journey was far from over, but he had learned valuable lessons. Survival was important, yes, but trust, observation, and intelligence were equally vital. Humans could endure, adapt, and influence outcomes, even in worlds they had never known. In the days that followed, Ethan continued his work, strengthening defenses, learning more about the alien world, and supporting Xylaria in her leadership. His presence became a symbol of resilience. The palace and the people had accepted him not as a stranger, but as a respected ally. Ethan understood that this was more than personal achievement. Humans were often underestimated in the galaxy, but here he had shown that courage, intelligence, and adaptability could earn respect and change outcomes. His actions had bridged worlds, proving that humans were capable of greatness far beyond what others expected. One evening, Xylaria approached him quietly. She gestured toward the palace, then toward the horizon, and finally to him. Ethan smiled faintly, understanding her meaning. His journey, far from being over, had reached a point of trust and partnership. He had become more than a survivor. He was an ally, a strategist, and a representative of human potential. As the twin moons rose over the palace, Ethan gazed at the alien horizon. He reflected on his journey, the crash, the injury, the Queen's trust, and the conspiracies he had helped prevent. Everything had led to this moment. Humans were strong, adaptable, and courageous. And here, in the presence of one of the galaxy's most powerful beings, he had proven it. Xylaria stood beside him, silent but supportive. The bond of trust between human and Queen had grown stronger than either had expected. Ethan felt a sense of accomplishment and purpose. His journey had started with survival, but it had evolved into something far greater: respect, recognition, and the ability to make a difference in an alien world. The palace lights shimmered gently, the floating gardens glowed softly, and the twin moons cast their reflection across the alien city. Ethan knew that the future held challenges, but he also knew that humans could face them. Survival, intelligence, and courage were universal qualities. And as he looked at Xylaria, standing tall and proud, he realized something even more important. Humans could earn respect anywhere. Even in worlds far from their own, humans could survive, adapt, and influence outcomes in ways no one expected. Ethan smiled faintly, feeling the weight of his journey and the strength of human resilience. He had arrived injured and alone, but he would continue as a trusted ally, a human who had proven that courage and intelligence could shape the fate of worlds. And in that moment, under the twin moons and the glowing palace, a human and an alien queen stood side by side, united by trust, respect, and the extraordinary power of human resilience.